myself a little bit this morning when we did the mechanical video. Or mechanical presentation. That's something that I've done a few times at camp. Many of you have heard that presentation before. This one's brand new, so I'm excited about it. It's the first time I've talked about it. It's kind of something that I've been thinking about over the last 4 years as I've dealt with some pretty elite athletes and had conversations with elite coaches about it. And I did a lot of reading this summer in preparation for this. I try to pick a topic every summer, something that I don't know a lot about, and try to become knowledgeable in that area every year, adding something new to my toolbox in order to be a better coach. So I'm excited about it. I'm going to start you off with what I tell my freshmen in our public speaking unit is called the flavor scene. So this is the flavor scene for you.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.
There is no spoon?
Then you'll see that it is not the spoon that bends, it is only yourself.
Anybody here listen to NPR? National Public Radio. Any NPR listeners?
Absolutely, man. Every day.
You guys are missing out.
Especially up here.
Before I go any further, if you've got a cell phone out or if you've got headphones on, take that stuff, turn it off, and put it away. About 60 minutes of time, just put it away. Headphones, electronics, just turn it off right now. So National Public Radio, I spent a lot of time driving from place to place, and that's the best station to listen to. And there's a program on National Public Radio called Radio Lab. There's another one called Snap Judgment that's pretty cool, but Radio Lab produced a show that I listened to recently on a road trip through Montana. And it started out by introducing two athletes and one group of athletes. And it was questioning what it is that makes a great athlete, particularly a great endurance athlete. And it got me thinking about the athletes that I've worked with that have been just sensational athletes in terms of what they were able to do relative to everybody else. This is a photograph taken about 100 meters from the finish of what race? State championships. And in the foreground is Carly Garcia, who was amazing Foot Locker West champion that year, one of the top athletes in California. And behind her, a considerable distance, is Carrie Burton of Camp Lindo. One of the most spectacular finishes that you'll ever see at the state cross-country championships in California. This was last fall, 2013. Again, this is a picture about 100 yards from the finish of the state championships. And that athlete there is Aiden Goldtrup, who just graduated from Camp Lindo and set the fastest time on the state meet course this past fall. Signed with Columbia. He's going on to do great things. But again, both races came down to a duel at the finish. In fact, in this race, there's one more athlete that's just out of the frame. There's 3 athletes, and they all finished within 1 second of each other at the finish. So I was listening to this piece on NPR, and it just kind of reminded me of those moments where, what is it that determines the difference between the athlete that finishes first and the athlete that doesn't? Because, as I said earlier, most of you and most of the athletes, they're getting the training that's going to make them aerobically or anaerobically capable of doing great things. So what's the difference? In the NPR piece that I listened to, they introduced this guy, Yuri Robic. He's Slovenian. He was in the Slovenian military and has since taken up bicycle racing, but not just any kind of bicycle racing. Recently, we've had the Tour de France, right, every summer in July. We watch what some people say is the greatest test, athletic test, 21 stages over the course of a month, and they ride how far? About 2,000 miles, 2,200 miles. Yuri Robic participates in what's called the Race Across America. Has anybody heard of this race before? What do you know about the Race Across America?
They go from California to New York.
Yeah, it's from the West Coast to the East Coast, the entire continent. What else? Anybody else know anything about it? Yeah. Hardest bicycle race in the world? Anything else?
Yeah.
So, it's 800 miles longer than the Tour de France. And the goal is to do it in 10 days. The tour is 21 stages spread over almost a month with a couple of rest days in between, right? These guys ride 3,000 miles, 800 miles longer than the Tour de France, and they do it in 10 days. And on average, those that are finishing in under 10 hours are getting 1 to 2 hours of sleep a night. That's the greatest physical feat that anybody can do. This is truly the hardest challenge in sports right now. How does he do it? He's won it 6 times. Yeah, he didn't just go and do it. He won it, and then he wanted to go back and do it again, and he's won it 6 times. He passed away, by the way, in 2010. Tragically, he got in a bicycle accident. When you spend that much time on the road, I guess it's eventually somebody's going to run into you. Who are these guys? Or girls. What do you know about the Kalenjin? Anybody know anything about the Kalenjin? I know Coach Hunt knows, and he's going to love my presentation. The Kalenjin are Kenyan. People talk about Kenyans being the group on the planet that's dominating distance running right now. But it's not the Kenyans. It's a tribe in Kenya called the Kalenjin. It's not Kenyans, it's the Kalenjin. What do we know about the Kalenjin? Well, let's talk about the U.S. The U.S. has had 17 men who have run under 2:10 in the marathon. We've had 17 athletes in the history of our country that have run that fast. somebody else, or one person postulated that what makes them great is that they have some things about them that are perfect for aerobic development, for endurance development, for creating these monsters of running. They have a high carbohydrate diet in their culture. They live at high altitude, 8,000 feet. Their socioeconomic motivation is that they're poor. And running has become one of the only avenues to raise themselves up out of poverty. They're highly motivated by that. And a touchy subject, but one that's based in science, is that they possess genetically a predisposition to be great endurance runners. Like many people at the equator, they have a body with limbs that are longer and become more slender as they get farther away from the torso, which is very efficient at cooling down their body. But you know what? There are other people in other places that possess these same attributes. So why aren't they doing what the Kalenjin are doing? And then the NPR piece introduced this lady. Anybody know who Julie Moss is? Anybody heard of this race? Right? This is the original Ironman, the Hawaiian Ironman, 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, and then you put a marathon at the end of it. In 1982, this Cal Poly graduate, or actually she was a grad student, was looking to finish up her degree, and they had to do some kind of athletic experience and then write about it. And she was watching the ABC Wide World of Sports and saw this happening the year before and said, man, this looks amazing. This is what I'm going to do my project on. Now, she was an athlete. I mean, she wasn't just, oh, get up off the couch and go do this. She was fit, but she went ahead and did some training, and the next year went out there, and for her grad project, she ran, swam, and biked, and ended up in the lead of this race with a mile to go. Andy, turn the sound up for us. So this is the NPR folks and Julie Moss talking about the finish of this 1982 Hawaiian Ironman.
I had to keep finding a way to keep going, and my thought was, this is mine.
You just fell again.
Oh, yeah.
See, this is the one that gets me right here. You fall down and your arms go back. It's like you're dying.
Yeah. And as I was putting one hand in front of the other, I saw this pair of titties go by and these legs, and I thought, that's her. She's gone by me. And it was just, I just thought, I quit. And all of a sudden, there was this voice that just said, get up, just keep moving forward. I could see the finish line about 10 feet in front of me, and I thought, get up. I can't get up again. I'd get up. Do not think I've sort of worn out that tactic. Get up. But I can crawl. And I crawl. And so here I am coming along, and the TV camera lights are blinding me, and I know what's happening. My life was going to be different. I mean, I felt my life changing. I made a deal with myself. A deal was struck. And I don't care if it hurts. I don't care if it's messy. I don't care how it looks. I would finish.
literally an inch at a time.
So, pretty dramatic scene at the end of the Ironman. She almost won that race. But you saw the struggle that she had at the end. What was it? What was going on in these final moments? I talked about the final moments of the state cross-country meet and questioning what's the difference between those people that get themselves to the finish line first and those that don't. What's going on in that video? What's happening to her? Her mind, right? She talked about what's going on in her head. Her mind is in a battle with what? So, I got really interested in what this was about. Timothy Noakes, South African exercise scientist, has done a lot of research on what it is that creates fatigue. What causes us to shut down as we exercise, as we progressively become more intense, as we get further into a race. He poses this question: is it a physiological reality? Julie Moss, her body is shutting down. She can't go any further. Is that because of what's happening in her muscles, bones, or tendons, or ligaments? Or is there a psychological aspect that we need to address? We've been working for 100 years under the premise that fatigue, or the limit to our performance, is...
I have no idea.
Is tied up in the limitations of our body being able to supply oxygen to our working muscles. It's limited by our ability to continue to provide fuel and the endurance of the muscles themselves. So when we talk about how much oxygen we can get into our muscles, we're talking about VO2 max, maximal oxygen uptake and delivery. We're talking about our fuel supply. We're talking about our glycogen stores. How much can we get in there, and how good are we at replenishing it as we go? But he questions this. Andy, can you turn up the volume again? So, here's the traditional model explained.
And the argument is that the reason why the athlete comes second is because his muscles have got too much lactic acid, and that causes him trouble. So the athlete who comes second, his heart's unable to pump enough blood to his muscles, so they become anaerobic, and as a consequence they produce lactic acid, which you all learned in biology causes muscle poisoning and stiffness, and everything that goes wrong in sport is related to this terrible product, lactic acid.
How many of you are familiar with that principle? How many of you are familiar with that terminology? How many of you use that in describing what happens when you start to bonk, when you start to fall apart in a workout or in a race? But there are some questions left unanswered by that model. Is the onset of fatigue consistent? So every time you do that workout, does it always hit you in the same place? Does it always hit you as hard? Does fatigue always occur at the same time from doing the exact same things? Or is it different in different instances, even though you're doing the same thing, even though you got the same amount of sleep, even though you had the same thing for lunch that day, is it always the same? It's not. Is it cumulative? So, does fatigue continue to escalate as you continue to exert yourself? Does it? Or in some instances, do you feel a certain level of fatigue and that level of fatigue maintains itself? Is the end result truly catastrophic? So you run and you run and you run and you run until complete failure, and at that moment you're done? Is that right? It's catastrophe? It is just absolute catastrophe. No! In fact, when you see world records set, do those people fall to the track and get carried off in stretchers? No. Most of the time, that person looks like the person that didn't even run the race. And they're just like, yeah, right! Carry the flag around the track, another lap! Andy, we need the volume again. Here, there's going to be a lot of time. I'm asking for volume today.
This is Haile Gebrselassie running the 10,000 meters. And this is his average pace for each kilometer. And what do you notice? He runs the fastest the last kilometer. But how can that be? How can he run as fast as when he's most fatigued? And all that tells you is that fatigue, as we describe it, has got nothing to do with the physical state of your body. Because he's performed much better when his muscles are the most tired.
Think about it. At the time, this was the fastest any human being had ever run. And he increases his pace or his exertion further into the race. But according to the traditional model of fatigue, fatigue is supposed to get worse and worse and worse and worse and lead to eventually a total shutdown. How does he defy that? Timothy Noakes has asserted that it's not our VO2 max, it's not our energy stores that limit our performance in a healthy athlete. Now, if you're sick, if you're anemic, then there are some physical things that are going to hold you back. But if you are a healthy athlete, what's ultimately limiting you is what he calls the central governor. The central governor. The central governor is your brain. Your brain limits your performance because your brain does not want to stop being your brain. Self-preservation. Homeostasis is that optimal state that your body always wants to be in. That's why if you stop working out, your body will stop burning energy and taking time to build those things that it needs to sustain the effort level that you've been doing and bring everything back down to the lowest possible expenditure with the least amount of muscle mass, because that's the easiest. Homeostasis is what your brain always wants. It's trying to preserve itself and you. It has to preserve you to preserve itself, right? Think about it. Here's another way to look at what we just saw in the chart. When you're in the middle of that race, how many of you have felt like this? Have felt like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm halfway. I've still got a mile and a half. I'm not sure. I don't feel very good. My legs are heavy. My breathing is rapid, and oh man, it's hot out here. And then you see that finish banner. And you literally feel differently. You feel physically different. But is it an effect or an affect? Is it actually that your body was somehow more fatigued in the middle of that race, but when you got to the end, it was less fatigued? Because you ran another mile? Or is there something going on here that's changing and limiting performance, regulating these biological pathways, and then opening them when your brain recognizes that you're not going to die because the finish line is right there and you can do this? Oh yeah, you'll make it. We're good. Go. There's scientific evidence that suggests your brain is so conservative that even in the most demanding endurance efforts, your brain never allows more than 50% of any muscle to fire, right? Because your muscle's made up of all these different fibers. And it only recruits, at most, 50% of them at any one time. So in essence, you're only at about 50%. You know, you've got your RPMs in the car and it goes up to 10. But your brain only lets it hit 5, and after that, it's just, you press on the accelerator and nothing happens. And you're like, well, why does it go to 10? Because there's something in that car that's regulating it, that's governing it. And actually, if you took it down the street to that guy that doesn't have the certified thing on his garage, and you just slip him the cash, he'll take that regulator off your car. And suddenly your little Honda Civic from 1985 is going like 120 down the freeway. I bet Honda's got that guy. So your brain is determining your pace. Noakes is asserting here that it is the brain that's deciding how you feel in terms of fatigue. That these things, the task, how far are you running? Is this a big race or just a dinky little dual meet that nobody cares about? Is this the championships? Is it 10 miles? Is it 2 miles? What is it? The task impacts how your brain determines how to limit your performance. The conditions, is it hot out? Is it cool? Sunny? Is it dark? These things your brain factors into deciding how much it's going to regulate your performance. The competition. Right? Are we going up against who? Dublin? Monte Vista? Vista del Lago? Camp Lindo? Who are we going up against? Your brain, Akalani's, are we, your brain is deciding based on the competition and the level of competition how it's going to allow you to feel. Your emotional state. Did you just break up with your girlfriend? Did she break up with you? Did you get in a fight with your parents? Did you see a scary movie? Did you get a bad grade? Your brain takes that into account in deciding how you're going to feel during performance. Mental fatigue. This one is interesting. I've talked before about the fact that I believe there are only so many times in a season that you can truly summon your best effort. And after a while, going to that well becomes tiring. Have you hit every race and treated it like it's the World Championships from the beginning of the season all the way through, and each time your brain is like, man, again, are you serious? Didn't we just do this last week and the 3 weeks before? How much sleep have you had? People get crazy without sleep. Things happen that they can't control because they don't get enough sleep. It's a fact. Things that you can't control happen because you don't get enough sleep. Oh, I'll be fine. No, I got this. Doesn't matter. Yes, it does, and you can't control it. State of recovery. Your brain decides, well, it's been 2 days since that really hard workout. Okay, we'll dial it up to here. Oh, no, we had a tough day yesterday. I'm only going to let them go to here. Motivation. Does it matter to you? If it matters to you consciously, your brain subconsciously will have a different point of view as well. If it doesn't matter, if you don't have any reason to push, your subconscious brain knows that. And it's not going to push either. It's going to make you feel tired because it knows you don't care. Self-belief. Do you really believe that you're capable of this? Your brain will decide, well, if they don't think they can, then why should I bother trying? And what kind of training, what kind of skills, what kinds of things have you incorporated into being an athlete that addresses this issue of trying to overcome your mind? We do all this stuff for our legs and our lungs, but how many times do you go to practice and spend an hour on regulating, overcoming, ignoring your central governor? Prior experience. I've run this course before, and I killed it the last time I ran it. And now your brain is going, yep, he did. Or the opposite, oh my God, the last time I was here was like the worst race of my season. And your brain, yeah, it was. And now you're going back to the same place. I remember that. Let's just do that again. Even in the midst of competition, we're not talking about before you start. We're talking about in the middle of competition, your conscious brain is making decisions based on how fast are you currently running and how hard does it feel. And that central regulator, based on that perception that you have, will either make you feel more tired or less tired. The distance that you've covered. Oh man, I've run 2.5 miles. I've run 10 miles tomorrow. I've run 12 miles. I can't go another 2 miles to get back to the bus. They can just leave me here. I like Humboldt. So, depending on how far you've come, your central governor may change how you feel. And of course, the proximity to the finish. How far do I have to go? And this is interesting. They've done studies, and they've told athletes, okay, we're going to pedal as hard as we can on these stationary bikes. And some of the athletes, they say, you're going to pedal for 10 minutes, as hard as you can. And then another group of athletes, they say, you're going to pedal as hard as you can. How long are we going to do this? You're going to pedal as hard as you can. Just do it as hard as you can. We'll tell you when you're done. The group that knows they're going to be finished in 10 minutes, their activation of muscle fibers, their oxygen transport, all of these biological things going on in their body become more efficient and are higher performing. And the group that doesn't know when they're going to finish, at no time, not even the first minute or the first 30 seconds, at no time do their levels come close to the levels in this group. Why not? I mean, they couldn't go all out for a minute. From the very start, their brain said, well, we don't know how far we're going. Your unconscious mind, not the central governor, but things that are happening in your psychology. Your brain controls what's going on. If it senses that your brain is not getting enough oxygen, or oxygen is being limited, it freaks out. If it notices, and it does, that you are running low on glycogen, I mean, you can't. Brandon, how much glycogen do you have?
No.
Yes, but your subconscious mind does. It does know.
40 hours.
The extent of fluid loss. Now, you can say that, oh, I feel thirsty, but your brain actually has a much more precise understanding of how much fluid you have or have lost. And based on these things, it's going to change how you feel in order to preserve itself. Heat accumulation, muscle damage. The brain is in control of everything that you do based on all those factors. It does this huge calculation that you are not aware of, and then makes you feel a certain way. Right? I gave it 100%, coach. No, you actually didn't, because by definition that would mean that you couldn't talk to me right now. If you've really given everything that you have, you'd be unable to speak. It's an emotion. Illusionary symptoms. You feel tired. Your lungs are burning. Your legs are heavy. But they're not. Your brain is just telling you that in order to preserve itself in the most cautious way. What can you do? You're not going to get rid of the central governor. It's there. You can't just eliminate it. It will dodge this. Avoid the triggers that set off your central governor. Right? Create a distraction. You can create a distraction so that your central governor doesn't notice that you're working hard. You can lie back to your central governor. Or you could just say, yeah, central governor, you're making me feel tired, but Chuck told me that this is just an emotion, so I'm going to ignore you and continue to run. Really? But like everything else, if you don't practice it, it's not going to be there on race day. It's not going to be there when you need to kill that workout. It's not going to be there when, you know, you're in the woods and there's a bear unexpected. Actually, it will be, and I'll explain why. So, appropriate pacing is a way to avoid the trigger. Jonathan Semenza, write this down. Okay? How many times have I gone out on a run? Got one last year. Have I gone out on a run, and man, those youngsters are just like, he's 44 years old, man, and boom, gone. And an hour and 20 minutes later, here they come. Well, here I come because they're staggering, right? Because at the beginning of the run, they excited their central governor. They rang alarms right away. Yo, escalating heart rate, breathing heavily. And the governor's like, yo, I'm on it, shut everything down, stop it, close it. Capillaries contract, right? Heart slows down. But if you kind of make it gradual and increase your pace gradually, your central governor might not notice so quickly. And in fact, might never panic and start shutting things down. Arousal control. Arousal control is another way to avoid triggers, right? So, this could be in the form of, getting the starting line, closing your eyes, and visualizing something that puts you in the right frame of mind, that allows you to focus and push things out. It could simply be reminding yourself of the things that you can control and that you can't control some things, and so you shouldn't be worrying about them. And this will, again, take you down from DEFCON 5 and how you perform. Positive attitude. Self-affirmation. Don't label yourself in a negative way. I'm not a miler. I'm not good at hills. Right? If you don't have a positive attitude consciously, there's no way your subconscious is going to help you out. This is going to be a tough course. There are hills. This is going to be a great opportunity for me to prove that I can handle hills and still perform well. I don't usually run the mile, but I want to see how much my speed work has improved my mid-distance. Right? Turn it into a positive statement rather than a negative, and your subconscious will follow. Visualize yourself doing well. And this will, in some ways, trick your central governor. Right? They did a study. If you sit and visualize yourself throwing free throws, or if you go out and practice free throws, both of those groups improved dramatically over the group that didn't do anything, either visualizing or practicing. Visualizing is virtual doing. So if you see yourself winning that race, your central governor is more likely to go, you know what, I think he can win this race. Purposefulness. I got to do this for the team. Don't let yourself off the hook. Give yourself a reason. I've got to do this for so-and-so. I need to honor the training that I've done. The coach is counting on me. Give yourself a purpose, and you can ignore the message. Get over the fatigue. Being focused. Athletes talk about being in the zone. Being in that zone. And that zone, it's like a trance. You've seen people walk on coals, right? Heard about it. How do they do that? It's like a trance that they put themselves in order to ignore the message, or maybe to put themselves in that trance before you get to that point, and your central governor isn't even paying attention because you've got some song going in your brain, or you're just completely zoned out. Tolerance. sometimes you just have to say, you know what, this is going to hurt. And I like it. Let's get back to Julie Moss. Julie Moss was getting signals from her central governor, right? Saying, your limbs are shutting down. You're too tired. You can't do this. But something in there contradicted the central governor. Her brain was thinking, she's gone 2.4 miles of swimming, 112 miles of biking, and a marathon. I need to preserve this body because it's what's keeping me alive. But something inside her was able to overcome that. And there was something left. And she did not then die after exerting everything to get across that finish line. Yuri Robic. Uh-oh. He had a younger brother, and the family gave that younger brother the family business and told Yuri he was worthless. Is that motivation? He turned it into motivation. He took that chip on his shoulder and used it to tell the central governor to go you know where. But there's more to it than that. There's a story about this guy 7 days into his race, getting off his bike and trying to wrestle with a mailbox because he thought it was a person that was giving him crap. And these guys have a crew, and they ride, or they're in a car, and they've got giant lights on the car because these guys are going all night long, and there's traffic on these roads, and so these cars kind of act as a safety, you know. Hey, there's a biker up here, and they're also shining lights so he can see. And he turns to them, and he's like, did you see them? They're back there. They're coming for me. And the guys in the car said, we see them. You got to go. Pedal faster. And he did. He began pedaling faster. He's been on the bike for like 7 days, and he's struggling, and he gets so fatigued and sleep deprived that he begins to hallucinate, and that hallucination fools the central governor into allowing him to do something, because now the central governor is saying, I'm not going to die because this guy is biking 3,000 miles. I'm going to die because these people on horseback are chasing him down and they're going to kill him. I think I'm going to give him a little bit more than 50% of the muscle fibers to use right now. And he's got that voice. That voice inside him that's overcoming what he's feeling. And now let's get back to these guys. The Kalenjin. What is it that puts them ahead of everybody else on this planet? What is it? What makes them such great runners? Is it this stuff? It definitely helps. Undoubtedly it helps. So I'm driving across Montana with my girlfriend. And
Lindsay was there.
this NPR piece just suddenly takes a really scary turn. So there's a guy, John Manners, and he, as a child, as a young boy, lived among the Kalenjin. And he saw some of his Kalenjin friends in their early teens coming to school, and they had scars on their body. All of them. Burns. And he said, what the hell? Well, he didn't say that. He was probably like 12 years old. He said, hey, what's going on? And they said, we're practicing. We're practicing. Because when we turn 15, we have a rite of passage. And this is going to determine whether we are respected in our tribe or we are looked at as cowards. And it starts by having to crawl naked through African stinging nettles, and when you put African in front of stuff, right, it makes it worse. Africanized bees, you know, they're like, seriously. You guys live in California. Those nettles out there, nothing. Okay, they take sticks or clubs, and that little part of you ever hit that bone right there on your ankle? Yeah. They get held down and beaten on that part of their ankle. They get their knuckles squeezed together, and then that acid gets right on their genitals. And I forgot to mention that during all of this, their face is caked in mud that's allowed to dry. And their peers and the people administering this, which, I mean, honestly, I think in our culture we'd call this child abuse, but they're watching to see if that mud cracks. Because that means they've acknowledged that there's something going on that's painful, right? Their expression. The mud has to stay uncracked all the way through the last part of the ritual. Why are these guys the best athletes in our sport? Right? They can beat you because overcoming that fatigue that they feel, that sensation, that emotion, they've already practiced how to overcome that kind of discomfort and a lot more. It's part of who they are, and they embrace it. In fact, here's what others are saying now about these athletes that are at the top of endurance sport. And it's not something new. We can go back to the first guy to crack the 4-minute barrier in the mile. And he was already talking about this. All of these legends of our sport, whose workout plans we've analyzed, training journals we've pored over, they've been saying it. So it brought me back to these moments that I've had, these amazing moments that I've had the fortune to be a part of. Carrie Burton is a senior in this race. She's a defending state champion, and she ran 3.1 miles in second place. And there was a point out in the course, and she told us to a reporter, where she said, I'm not sure if I can do this. And then she ran past her mom, and her mom screamed at her, Carrie, you can do this. And Carrie says that there was a voice in her head that said, come on, you can do this. You're not going to finish this race and not push harder than this. And she won that race. Aiden Goltra, this past fall, won his second title. In his first title as a junior, he told a reporter in the last stretch of the race, he was repeating over and over again a question, saying, do you have something more to give? Do you have something more to give? Do you have something more to give? And then, in the last quarter mile, he kept saying, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Does that mean that training is irrelevant? I mean, if you can overcome your central governor, so just sit home and eat chips. Right? And then when the race time comes, you're just like, no, that's not what it means. It means all things being equal, the person that wins that race is the person who's able to harness this. You've got to be fit, but all things being equal, it's about what's going on up here, right? We're a complex system, and it's never going to be one thing. It's never going to be one thing. Oh my God, I had this person tell me about 10 years ago, all I needed to do was eat flaxseed oil. But it's never one thing. They wouldn't shut up about it. It's, okay, I will take a teaspoon of flaxseed every once in a while, but I'm also going to run, and I'm going to do abs, and I'm going to do all this stuff. You've got to do all of that stuff. But ultimately, with all other things being equal, this might be it. Andy? So, when you're out there and you start to feel these sensations of fatigue, you might want to consider, the things that we've gone over here. Are you really unable to close that gap in the middle of that race, that 8-meter gap that's opened up? You just can't do it. Or can you? Is there something else there? When you're on that run, doing that workout, are you going to do that 5th rep? Because, yeah, you're tired, but you know that you need to practice this. You need to practice overcoming your central governor when you train in order to be able to do it when you race. Billy Mills, in his journal, finished his entries leading up to the Olympics that he won with the word believe. Believe. You have to believe. You have to believe. And if I could just play this video now, that would have been really cool. Okay. Oh my God, this is going to work. Believe in it, Chuck. It's going to work. All right. Just go in here.
Look it up.
Get up.
Believe. Thanks for your time. You've been a great audience.